Hello, everyone. This is Monica the Creative Beast. Thank you so much for stopping by my channel and watching this little flip through video that I am making about one of my art books made for the Are You Book Enough Art Challenge. If you haven't seen my other videos, this is a challenge that is held monthly, hosted by Sarah Moe. You can find her on Instagram at Ink and All, or you can find her at Editions Studio, and I will be adding links for the Instagram accounts and the Editions Studio website, where you can learn more about this monthly book challenge, the themes, and how to join and participate, because it's a lot of fun. There is a monthly theme, and I've been part of this challenge since November 2017. So I have more than 12 books to share, and I'm making more with every theme in the month. And I thought I would go back and share some of the early books that I made from the very beginning of this challenge. So this is actually the second art book I've made. The theme was Journey, and I decided that I would make a little book about my personal creative journey. Now, this is a meandering book, so it's a little, and I used a really huge sheet of paper to make it, so it's not easy to capture the whole thing in one screenshot, so I'll be kind of folding and refolding and unfolding and refolding as I go. But for now, here's the book, and I will show you all the parts of it in just a minute as we do a little bit of camera magic. Yay! Here's the book. I'm so excited to share it with you. So this is made out of a large sheet of paper. I think it was 24 by 17 inches. And because it's a meandering book, you know, it could be flopping all over the place. So I made what is known as a belly band to go around the book. And on the back, I have the colophon, which is essentially like, usually in a published, printed, assembled traditional book, it is the last page of a book that tells you, you know, the author, when it was published, a limited quantity, the font typeface that was used for the book, and other information like that. Sometimes it will include materials if it's, you know, a handcrafted artsy book. When I've made some of my own mixed media books, I usually have some form of a colophon. Sometimes it's a tag that lists all the materials and supplies that went into it. So this is an accordion book made for Are You Book Enough Challenge, with the theme of Journey for December 2017. Although the final belly band and other little details were completed in January. Sometimes I'll put those details down as well. So I was using my watercolor paints and some metallic pens, and that's one of the reasons why things weren't quite as completed as I would have liked, because I was using ink that smeared. Some of this jelly pen ink didn't dry fully as I was closing the book up, so as a result it smeared all over the place, but I just went on ahead and kept working on this book. So all maps have a legend, and this is a map of my journey, so I made a little legend of my creative journey. So you see the colors correspond to each item. I began my creative life with sewing. I learned knitting not long after that. I was writing and calligraphy. I made a commitment when I was in the third grade. We were learning handwriting. I said to myself, I'm going to have the best, prettiest handwriting, and I'm just going to practice this to make sure that I have it. So I have to say, calligraphy was kind of early. I learned some jewelry making. I've played with photography since maybe teen years. I danced. I did theater and costume. So those are like my early origins of creativity. So let's start the book. And it's sort of a dedication here. Creativity has been a continual thread throughout my life. It's my true North Star. Hand sewing began at the age of 6. Handmade dolls, handmade doll clothes and teddy bears. Yep, my grandmother put a needle in my hand when I was about 6 years old, and I've been sewing ever since. So let's do this. Coloring and drawing began at 7. I loved drawing and coloring flowers. I still do. And I've conducted a Coloring for Adults workshop in the past, so coloring has been part of my life off and on. Knitting began at age 8 or 9. I knew how to knit, purl, cast on and off, but it wasn't until much later in my adulthood that I learned how to decrease properly on each side, along with making stitches and increasings. So that came at a way later time. My machine sewing skills began at the age of 11. My mother bought me a Kenmore sewing machine, which I still have, but my grandmother taught me on her vintage sewing machine. And as I wrote here, she was not a nice teacher, but I learned. Yeah, my grandmother was a difficult woman, to say the least. I began ballet at the age of 11. I started late, so being a ballerina was not in my future. But I know I've been a mover and a shaker ever since. And being on a stage is something I have learned and enjoy. And it helps me make these videos for you and do my live creative online gatherings. I began making jewelry at around 13. It might have been 12, but my mother loved having jewelry made, and she would go to this lapidary store of stones, and they would have jars of these little tumbled stones, and I would go through them and look for 2 that came closest to matching in size and shape, and they taught me how to use, resin and make little bell caps and put them on screw earrings, and later I had my ears pierced, and then I really started making more earrings. So I've made jewelry. I received a set of watercolored tube paints when I was about 14. I still have them. A few of them have dried out, but I still have them. I actually like pan paints a lot, but I still have that tube set, and I will be working with it over time, off and on. Let's see. I began proper calligraphy at the age of 15. I still have the original holder, pen nib holder, and the original nibs. As I mentioned here, I rather like having these vintage tools, and I do like having vintage tools for my creative work when I can find them. Dance shows and theater in high school from the age of 15 to 17, and actually I did a lot of theater beyond 17 and dance beyond 17. I learned about modern dance in high school, and I've loved it ever since. And yes, this would lead to performance art later, much later in my adult life. I began art studies in high school. Thank you, Mr. Gregory. He was my first big art teacher, and he was actually related to Cynthia Gregory, who was a big ballerina for American Ballet Theater. So it was really kind of cool to be so close to ballerina greatness. And he was a good teacher. A little serious, but good and helpful. Yeah, you can see here. I was excited to learn, related to Cynthia Gregory of American Ballet Theater. Woo-hoo! And also in high school, I did a lot of reading and literature, a lot of reading of English literature. I did a lot of writing and composition. When I transferred to junior college, I was an English major. And I have a note here. Wild Lit, which was world literature, with a teacher who made words come alive and believed she was a polar bear in a past life. Her classroom was just papered with images of polar bears. It was hilarious. And one of my takeaways from that is that teachers can be fun. And she was a lot of fun, and everybody loved and adored her. She had the best stories too. I began costuming for dance productions when I was in high school. And this eventually led me to work with the LA Opera and Disney Imagineering, especially after I did my fashion design and pattern drafting studies in my early 20s. I began to play with cameras at around 17, 19 years old. Anybody remember 35 millimeter cameras and rolls of film? I still have some of those images, those photos. I can say honestly that before flat lay was a word, I was doing some flat lays, and I was also doing little vignettes, because those are my favorite things, to put little collections of things together for photography. My first hand-bound book, I was about 21 or 22. It wouldn't be my only hand-bound book, as you can see from this book here. And new adventures await. Creative adventures, that is. The creative journey continues. So that is a trip through my creative journey. Yeah. I had a lot of fun making this book. I hope you've had fun looking through it with me. And I'll be sharing more of my early books with Are You Book Enough? I now have about 13 or 14. I'm working on another one for the theme of this month. Sorry, the light is filtering in. The sun shifted while I was sharing this book. But I'm just going to deal with the imperfection of the light for today. So thanks so much for joining me. I hope you had fun with this flip through, and I look forward to seeing you again with my next flip through of another one of my art books, or possibly one of my art journals. Okay, thanks so much. I'll see you again soon.